Good morning again, everybody. So Reverend Curley touched on the eclipse, and since I've had so many questions about the eclipse since it occurred, I thought I would discuss the eclipse today. And before we do so, the introductory scripture that I wanted to discuss complement Reverend Curley's scripture in a different way, and then we'll put them together at the end. So we find similar verses in Matthew, Luke, and Thomas. I'll start with Matthew 10, verse 34, where Jesus says, "Do not expect that I have come to bring peace on earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." And in Luke, chapter 12, 49 through 53, again he says, "I came to set earth on fire, and I wished to do it if it had not already been kindled. I have a baptism to be baptized with, and I am oppressed until it is fulfilled. Do you think that I have come to bring peace on earth? I say to you, no, but divisions. For from henceforth there shall be 5 in a house, who will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. For a father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." And in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, verse 16, Jesus said, "Perhaps people think that I have come to cast peace upon the world. They do not know that I have come to cast conflicts upon the earth, fire, sword, war. For there will be 5 in a house, and there will be 3 against 2, and 2 against 3, father against son, and son against father, and they will stand alone." These verses appear to be a stark contrast to what was said in Reverend Curley's interpretation, and I will talk about that in light of the eclipse. So humanity's spiritual mission is to establish heaven on earth. That's what we're here to do. It is our goal, first with each individual, and then society as a whole. However, until we individuals can sufficiently transform lower self into our higher self to guide our life's actions, we will live in a world with trial, tribulation, division, and conflict. This situation is the direct consequence of our negative thoughts and actions that are not in harmony with God's divine laws. The sword that the Nazarene talks about in Matthew, Luke, and Thomas is nothing more than the karmic reactions we have created. It is the end result of sowing negative seeds instead of positive seeds. In both individuals and societies, the karmic sword swings in cycles, with periods of quiet and periods of great change and turmoil. Reflect on your own life, times when you've had quiet, solitude, and relative peace, and times when you've had great trial, tribulation, and turmoil. Society is reflected in the same way. Now, as individuals, we have free will, and we can modify our karmic sword with constructive thoughts and selfless good deeds. That is our spiritual destiny. We have control over our spiritual destiny. However, society's karmic sword is dependent upon the number of those who choose righteousness or unrighteous actions. Because humanity all too often has succumbed to the dominance of their lower selves, history tends to repeat itself with consequences of famine, plagues, and wars. Now, in the past, we've talked about different ages, and Reverend Curley intimated that as the coming age of spirituality. These ages are determined by astrologic constellations that govern at the time of the spring equinox. The Nazarene came to the earth at the transition from the age of Aries the lamb or the ram into the age of Pisces the fish. We are now in the transition, leaving the age of Pisces the fish into the age of Aquarius. The Aquarian age has been prophesied to be an age of spirituality, of personal responsibility, and a time period of spirituality on earth that the society hasn't seen in a very long time. History also tells us that the birth of a new age from the previous age is one of great change and trial that involves the karmic sword. Our world, the world, has been in this transition for 100 or more years, building up to the present time period. Many great prognosticators have had visions and predictions concerning this transition from the age of the mind to the age of the soul, including Nostradamus, Hindu and Persian mystics, George Washington, Dr. Randolph, Peter Davidson, and Dr. Clymer. That brings us to this recent solar eclipse of August 21st. Now, solar and lunar eclipses are significant events at a spiritual level and at an earthly level. Overall, eclipses create internal transformation that ultimately results in an external event or transformation. Now, the last solar eclipse that went completely across the United States was almost 100 years ago, on June the 8th, 1918. And we made a big media attention to this solar eclipse because this is the first one that has occurred in about 100 years. We've had many other eclipses, but not one that went all the way across the United States from West Coast to East Coast. What makes an eclipse significant is its location on Earth and other astrological components in conjunction with that eclipse. And not all eclipses have major events associated with them. Now, this most recent eclipse that we had, and I'm going to give some astrological information, and I'll be the first to admit I am not an astrologer. And there's probably some of you in this room that know far more about this than I do, and that's fine. But I want to give you some basics, at least of what I know. So this recent eclipse occurred in the astrological sign of Leo, and specifically at the third decadent of Leo, the last 10 degrees of Leo. So basically at the end of Leo. Now this is important because Leo is considered as the heart of the zodiac. Leo is the sun of the zodiac. In the past age, especially in the age of Taurus, Leo reigned over the summer solstice and was the keystone of the arch of the zodiac constellations. In other words, it was pretty important. Astrologically, Leo represents the light of God. And when the light of God is obscured, even temporarily, we see both spiritual and physical ramifications. Now, furthermore, this past eclipse that we had involved Mars as the astrologic ruler of the eclipse, and also Mercury, along with certain configurations of Uranus and Saturn. The Sun, the Moon, the North Node, and Mars in Leo, all aligned with each other, formed in what's called the Grand Fire Trine, since all of these planets are fire signs. Now, according to William Lilly, who was a Christian astrologer in the 1600s, he said eclipses that occur on the end of Leo, that last decadent, are ruled by Mars and signify the following: death or misfortune for royalty, nobility and persons of quality, the ruination and destruction of ancient buildings, palaces and churches, division among the clergy, the besieging of towns, and scarcity of horses and grain. In modern day interpretation, William Lilly's words would signify upheaval, rioting, and the general havoc caused by such events. Now, since the eclipse straddles our entire country, this eclipse has specific application to the United States. The United States will also have another solar eclipse that covers most of the nation, occurring next time from Mexico all the way through New England and Maine in April 8th, 2024. So some astrologers believe the 7-year cycle sandwiched between these two eclipses of this August and April of 2024 is to be a very intense epic cycle with far and wide implications, financial markets, individuals, and nations. In other words, a 7-year cycle of great change. At least that's what's predicted. Now, in general, I'm sure all of you are aware, us humans do not like change. We usually prefer the known, even if it is dysfunctional, to the unknown, which we often catastrophize in our minds. So now, whether the tumultuous changes predicted by astrologic interpretation of the recent eclipse come to pass or not, change is inevitable. If we do not encounter change, we will stay stagnant and stop growing. Stagnation is lukewarm, and the Nazarene told us what to do with lukewarm. Spit it out. So I'd like to share a vision of the New Age from Hafed, the Prince of Persia, written in 1871. And this is one of the Persian mystics. We beheld in darkness a little bright spark burning. It has ever been thus in all the ages of the past. True light is never altogether extinguished or quenched. We saw but past your day the long desired, the long promised return of a glorious time, the theme of prophets and poets of the long past, the golden age of the Greeks, the paradise of the Hebrews, where man served God in truth, drinking in heaven's wisdom and communing with angels, even as he would his fellows. We saw barrier after barrier removed by the mighty power of the great reformer. With that thought in mind, I'd like to swing back to Leo and the spiritual significance of the constellation Leo. Leo, the heart of the constellation, is the 12th and of the last heavenly configurations. The Aquarian age has brought in the age of Leo also, and with it, the inner breath that a godlike race may be born. Humanity born anew in spirituality. Sheol has returned with the magnificent entrance of Virgo standing upright, holding her hand the promised seed of the Redeemer. This is from Grace Kincaid Moore, and she goes on to say about Leo, and specifically America. These lands, and she was talking about United States, Mexico, and I will add here North and South America, will come the land of peace, which we will have as its symbol, the eagle with branches in her claws instead of arrows. Branches in her claws instead of arrows. The drama of the heaven has never failed, nor deviated from the original script of the law, nor will it deviate one jot or tittle now. America will yet, in truth and fact, become the land of the free for those who will win the fight against evil inclination within themselves, as well as the desire to dominate others, and as a result of this conquest, be free from every evil outside of themselves. So as I said, whether the predictions of the 7-year cycle of the solar eclipse come true or not, or no matter what events we see, change is inevitable. So what are we to do and what can we do? First, I'll start on the physical level and then the spiritual level. As all of you know in the news, we just had a major hurricane storm on the coast of Texas. So I asked, if that hurricane hit us instead of Texas, would you be ready for it? Okay. Would you have enough food in your pantry for a couple weeks if that's what it took? Would you have some money for a rainy day? Would you have the physical preparations for a hurricane or an earthquake or any sort of natural event? And if not, perhaps is the time to think of that, okay? Because we have had a hurricane here, although it doesn't happen too often. Now, spiritually, we could have all the food we want. We could have the Fort Knox of gold in our basement, but unless we align ourselves with the spiritual path of the divine, all of that will be for naught. Reverend Curley intimated that, discussed that in her talk. Hitch your wagon to the light of God. Wear that spiritual mane of Leo the lion. Become an agent for change, for positive change. We know that in times of darkness and in times of turmoil, in times where things seem to be really out of joint, at the same time, more light presents itself. It is the law of balance. It's physics. It has to occur. Align yourself with that positive light. Become a part of it. Now, as we commit ourselves to our spiritual practice and to living our spiritual life, we will, just like Moses and the Hebrew people with him, pass through the waters to the promised land of the new age of enlightenment, new age of responsibility, the new age of